everyone, it's Alyssa here at the Township of Washington Library, and I'm coming to you with our annual December Paint Along for Teens. We are doing this really cute, simple, but super fun. Oh, hang on, it's still stuck to the paper. There it is. Penguin painting. All right, so I'll show you close up. This is a pretty simple one. It's really just all about having fun with creating your background and your colors and your little penguin face. Really simple, really fun. I really like doing this one. It doesn't take that long. I've given you everything that you need if you got a kit, your canvas board, some different brushes, a sponge, a larger tip square brush and a thin brush, and a variety of colors. Really simple, it doesn't take that long. You do need to be patient. You do need to work in layers and let it dry in between some of your layers. But it's lots of fun, so put on a fun movie, listen to an audiobook or your favorite tunes, and let's get started. Okay, unfortunately, the camera that I was using did not record anything that I did, so I'm starting again on my phone. But all I did was I did the background, which is really easy to do, and I'll kind of show you a little bit of what I did. So I started with just the blue, okay? And I'm using my sponge brush here. Started with just the blue, and we're going in diagonal strokes, as if it's a little windy out maybe, right? A little winter windy day. Okay, and then I started adding in streaks of white, and we want to do this while that first coat of just blue is still very wet. Acrylic dries pretty quickly, and I made sure this was still very, very wet because then the white blends in so much nicer. So here we go. Just see how that blends in because the blue's already wet. So they're blending and mixing together. Parts of my canvas that I did the first time I tried to record are already sort of drying a little bit. Okay, and then what I did was I mixed on my newspaper here, paper towel, whatever it is that you have down to protect your surface. I did just a little drippy drop of black. And what that does is it takes some of the saturation out of the blue. So it's almost a little grayer, which makes sense if we're having some snow. It gets a little gray, right? The sky gets a little gray when it's about to start snowing. And then you can pop some white into that and blend that too. A little more blue. And just keep blending that. And you can also do, so you can see I'm kind of using the flat side, but you can also use this sharp edge point here to make a line and then blend it down. I'm gonna add some more blue in here. I even added just a smidge bit of green to some blue that I mixed up here and white to get sort of a teal kind of sky color. And again, it's just another shade for our sky. And I streaked that through too, just a little bit, in places where I could blend it easy. Again, I'm gonna get my blue in here and go over and blend. And it just adds some extra color dimension and makes it interesting, okay? You wanna make sure that your entire canvas is covered. And don't forget to do the edges, the top, the bottom, and the sides so that our canvas looks nice and finished. Okay, and you can keep playing with this as much as you would like, but when you're all done with your sky, you're going to take a few minutes, give it 10 minutes, and let it dry completely, because the next thing that we're going to move on to is the penguin, which has really pure blacks and pure whites. And we don't want that to get muddled by the blue. So give it at least 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, and we'll come right back and we'll start to make our penguin. Okay, my canvas is pretty much totally dry now, so I'm gonna take my thin brush I also have my water cup over here and some paper towels in case I need it. I'm gonna get my brush just a little wet so that I'm going to use the white paint kind of watered down as an outline here. And I'm gonna draw my little penguin outline and then we'll fill it in. Okay, so my penguin's gonna be kind of off to the side. And to start, it's almost like the shape of an M. So I'm gonna just do a little M shape here. Right, and that's the start here. And then I'm gonna grab some more white and bring this down. And then bring it out to the side. This can be a little wider here. Okay, so this is gonna be my penguin shape. So I'm gonna go over this outline that I made just to make sure it's nice and opaque. And then we can start to fill it in. I'm using the thin brush for the outline, but if you would like to switch to your bigger brush to do the rest, go for it. Okay, and then you will want to let this dry a little bit. You can also go ahead and start going in with the black now and let your white dry before you do another layer. We're also gonna do just a little bit of shading with the white. So let that dry. I'm gonna go in with my black. And we're just gonna make a nice cute little round penguin shape here, kind of all around. Just a nice little round penguin here. Make sure your outline line is nice and solid. Fill in all the little holes that come in from the canvas, and then just like we did with the white, you can go ahead and fill this in. Be careful not to color out of the lines when you're getting into the white, so keep using your thinner brush while you're close to these lines. And if you get a little bit of white like I just did streaked into the black, that's a lot easier to cover up than if you get black into the white. So when in doubt, pull away, not in. Okay, so now we can go back to the white. Make sure your brush is dry. I had mine sitting in the water cup so that it didn't dry out, because once that acrylic paint dries out on your brush, that's not very fun. But I'm gonna go ahead with another coat of the white to cover up some of these streaks and some of the blue that's showing through. We are going to add some blue for some shading, but I want to be able to control it myself rather than it being the blue that's showing through from the background. So see, look, in this coat, much more even, and that's the white that I would like. So again, just be careful by your black edges. You don't want any of the black to pull into the white. We're going to use the blue for our shading. And you could put on a pretty thick layer of white paint because the wet paint will help us with our shading, just like when we did the background. Okay, That is pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take a little bit of blue and mix it up here on my paper with the white. It's gonna be just a subtle shade of blue. Maybe take less blue than I did. That's too much blue. It's just a kind of a subtle, there we go. And remember, paint usually tends to dry darker too. Right, we're gonna go for this sort of stipply look that we're gonna use to kind of coat the penguin entirely. On these outside edges here, we're gonna add some of that blue to shade him a little bit. And we're gonna kind of keep the shading confined to the sides here. Sort of like where his little wings would be. It also just adds a little dimension. And then go ahead, stick your brush back in the white and stipple the white as well. And if you find, like me, that it's kind of pulling some of the white away, just let it dry for a few minutes. In the meantime, if your black up here has dried, you can start to kind of figure out the shade for your hat. I've given you red. It's a pretty bright red. You can also use the leftover green if you want to do green. You could do a black hat, you could do a white hat, whatever you would like. There are some colors that you have enough paint that you can mix with. I have this red here, but it's very, very bright, so I'm actually going to take some of that saturation out by mixing it with some black. Just a little bit of black and a lot of red will take your saturation out. You don't need a lot of black because it will really muddy up your paint very, very quickly. So to control that, I am putting it in a different little well here. I think I've said before, I really love using a paper plate when I'm at home for a paint palette if you don't have one of these little plastic palettes. But see there, now it's just a darker, more wintry red rather than something super, super bright. Okay, and we can start to work on the hat. Just a big oversized sort of knit looking hat. So I'm going to, it's gonna fit sort of slouchy and nice right on the penguin's head. So I'm gonna go right in here and make sort of a soft little curve right there. And we're going to sort of mark out where the brim will be. We're really just following right along the line of the penguin's head. You don't need to cover any of the black, but you don't need to worry about overlapping. It's really no big deal. And think if you're wearing a hat that's been knit or crocheted or something, it's kind of slouchy. It doesn't really have a lot of form, right? So you don't need to have any sharp corners here. And so this is where my brim is gonna be. I'll fill that in. Again, you might need some layers. And then think, what's the rest of the shape of the hat gonna look like? So you're gonna come in from the brim a little bit, this folded over brim, and make sort of a lumpy little hat here. And you can start to work on filling that in too. While my brim is still wet, like I've been doing with most of my paint, I'm gonna stick my brush into some of the white. and do a highlight here. Or at least start to. It's kind of tough. This paint is a little transparent. Here we go. And blend that into the wet paint. You can keep adding your regular red color in here. Okay, then let that dry a little bit. We'll keep working on the shading. Make sure your brush is clean of that lighter red color, no white on there. Go back in with the regular color. Now just kind of, now that you know where your brim is gonna live, finish filling in the rest of the hat. And we're gonna play with this line. We're gonna go back and forth a little bit because now I'm also going to darken it, right? So because I made this lighter, you can see that this is more forward. I'm gonna take another little drippy drip of the black with my red color, because now we're gonna create more of a shadow. And if you have to touch up the white part of your brim, that's no big deal. But we wanna make it clear that this is sort of recessed and shaded. And then I can go back in and crisp up that brim line again. But I know where all of it lives now, or where I want it to live. And you can use some of that black to create some shading. And here, I'm gonna let that dry a little bit before I go in and do another layer, because you can see some of the blue is peeking through. I wanna add some of the white to make some highlights on some of the edges, right? So there's a lot that we can do, but sometimes we do need to let it dry a little bit, and sometimes we need to blend when the paint is still really wet. You'll kind of figure it out as you go. You don't have to do any shading at all, too. If it's not something that you're comfortable with or you don't like, don't do it. No problem. I'm also working in these sort of little C strokes here, because that will mimic some of the knit texture, right? Like little layers. I'm not making a real knit texture. That's not something that I'm doing at this level here, but the little C's are kind of reminiscent of fabrics. Kind of as I've been working, this has been drying out a little bit. So go back in and do some of my low lights, my shadows. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush a little bit, get rid of the black, and then I'm gonna touch up my brim, and then I'm gonna go back and do my white. I'm gonna add a lot of white right here, which is gonna be kind of scary, but then I'll go back in with the red color again and fix that. Okay, now I'm gonna go back in with my regular red color. And mix that into the red and white highlight. Don't forget to wipe off your brush every so often to get rid of some of the white paint or black paint or whatnot that's sort of latched onto your brush. You even add some ribbing here, like in knitting, you know, sometimes you have those lines, it's called ribbing. And you can add some of that up in here too. Okay, I'm gonna wash this off. touch up my black because you can see I did make a little mistake there. No big deal. Okay, we're gonna go back to focusing on our white and the texture on the white, which is just this stippling kind of texture. Cover up any places that there was too much blue or the blue from the background was coming through. Right, so when we paint, we like to work in layers, and this is really why. Keeps everything the way you want it to be, but you do need to sort of dry things up a little bit in between. Okay, so now my penguin has some feathery, fluffy texture. And you can perfect that as much as you would like. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do with my thin brush, this can be a little wet here, no problem. And I'm gonna go into the black and I'm gonna make cute little eyes. So I'm gonna start with just a little curve. Okay, so I made my little crescents. And then we're going to extend from there and make a U. Boop. And then we'll fill that in. And if your white is still a little wet, it's not going to be perfect, but we're just getting the shape in there. So we're going to make a little U. Okay, those are cute little penguin eyes. You'll fill them in. And then when this is dry, again, we're gonna work in layers. When this is dry, we'll go back in and fill it out so that the black is totally opaque and not gray. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing now with the orange and make a little nose. And this is gonna be kind of a triangle, but like rounded, so maybe kind of more of a candy corn shape here. So you can start by making a little triangle. And again, we're just getting the shape in here, but we'll need to do some layers to make sure we've covered everything and to do a little shading. Okay, so I'm just laying down the first layer here, all good. I'm gonna clean up some lines over here. Okay, we're gonna grab some white. We're gonna make our little pom-pom. And to make that, we're just gonna, and it doesn't matter if the tip of your brush is all together or not, or if it's looking kind of splayed and open, we are just gonna do that. Layers and layers of that, as long as the red of your hat is dry. But see, look, it's looking like a little pom-pom. And I'm just going all around and around and around. And I'm just doing little swirls. And it should be the whitest and most concentrated there in the middle. So you can do lots of layers. Look, see, it looks kind of fuzzy. If you want, you can do a little bit of gray. So mix your white with some black, just the tiniest little bit. So you can kind of get some shading in there. And that can be for some of the pieces underneath. And then you'll go back in again with the really crisp white. Right, so like let this dry and then go back in with a really, really crisp white and do your center and a couple more of these little frilly bits here. You can also, if this is dry, you can do little pink cheeks if you want. You don't have to, but you could. So I included a little pink, but you can really just use the white and red if you want. But I figured this was a little bit of a different shade, so that would be nice. A different tone than this kind of raspberry red over here. And then also if you had wanted to make a pink hat, you could have made a pink hat, you know, all that. Okay. You could do some cute little cheeks, and I'm just dabbing again so that the edges kind of blend into the white and it's not so solid. There we go. Keep making sure your brush is dry, because if your thin brush is wet and you're trying to go in and make corrections, it's just going to keep re-wetting your paint and it's not going to help at all. So keep your paper towels handy. I'm going to grab some more white and mix it with the orange. And add some shading for my orange, right? So we're still kind of working with the assumption that maybe there's some light coming from that side over there. So now that I've made sort of this light orange, I'm gonna mostly fill in this cute little beak here. But I've left that darker orange, the actual orange, I didn't go edge to edge. And so I've sort of naturally created some shading there, whereas it gets closer to the penguin's face, it's a little darker. And then on this side where there's less light, it's also a little darker. I can also go in with some more orange and do that side. I can also do is I can take the back side of my brush and dip it into the white and just give a little shine to my penguin's eyes. It gives just a little bit of life. This is dry now too. So again, I'm gonna clean my brush really, really well. Wipe it off really, really well. And get it into just the white, just the bright, bright, bright white, and do just the center of this pom-pom here with just white. And now there's just a little pop of dimension on that little fluff ball there. Okay, the next thing that you can do with the white, you can even pop a little bit of blue into it. You can make a little snowflake if you want. You do a little snowflake. You can also, I like to do this with a toothbrush, but I will demonstrate with this brush here. Some white. And you can kind of wet it just a little bit, and then you, ready, flick it towards the canvas, not towards yourself. And look at that, now it's snowing. And there you go, you have your penguin painting.